Qatar has released 8 Indian Navy personnel, veterans who were sentenced to death over espionage charges. 7 of them have already returned to India after an 18-month jail custody. The Navy veterans have thanked Prime Minister Modi for personally intervening and bringing them back home. In December last year, the Prime Minister had met the Emir of Qatar on the sidelines of the COP28 summit in Dubai. Foreign Secretary Vinay Kwatra said that Prime Minister had monitored all the developments in this case and was committed to the safe return of these naval veterans. Initially, their sentence got commuted from death to life, and then late last night, there was a statement put out by the MEA saying that all 8 of them have now been let free, and 7 out of those 8 have come back to India.
खुशी हो रही है कि वापस इंडिया पहुंच गए हम सेफ एंड साउंड और डेफिनेटली ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री मोदी को धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे कि उनके पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन से ये पॉसिबल हुआ।
ये वाले दिन का हम बहुत दिनों से वेट कर रहे थे और प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी और उनका पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन, उनका इंटरेक्शन, और एक और मौका लेना चाहता हूँ कि थैंक करूँगा एमीर को कतर के, जिनके उनके इंटरेक्शन के कारण आज हम यहाँ खड़े हैं।
We have waited almost 18 months to be back in India. We are extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. It certainly wouldn't have been possible without his personal intervention and that equation with the Emir of Qatar. I think we are grateful to the Government of India, from the bottom of our heart, for the every effort that has been made, and this day wouldn't have been possible without it.
Honorable Prime Minister has himself personally, constantly supervised all the developments in this case and has never shied away from any initiatives that would ensure the return of Indian nationals back to home. We can talk of different frames and terminology, like Sridhar you mentioned, whether it's a release or a pardon, etc. But I think we should see the facts for what they are. 7 of the 8 Indian nationals of Dahra case are back in India, back to their homes. As I said, we are extremely gratified about it and appreciate deeply the gesture of the Emir of Qatar for their release.
All right, I want to go across to former Foreign Secretary, in fact, Kanwal Sibal. Thank you very much, Mr. Sibal. This is quite an extraordinary turn of events where you had these 8 former Navy veterans who were sentenced to death, and then suddenly in the space of the last 2 months or so, the death got commuted to life, and now they've been set free, apparently pardoned by the Emir of Qatar. Have you seen something as dramatic as this, and what would you attribute this to? Because the charges against them were pretty grave. Espionage charges are not light charges, that any country levels.
Well, firstly, this is unprecedented in any case. I can't recall of a case where ex-Navy personnel of any country have been imprisoned in this manner for 18 months or whatever the period, and then sentenced to death, and then given varying years of imprisonment as in a judgment by the higher court. Actually, in a sense, it was humiliating that a country like India should be subjected to this publicly. The other thing, of course, was that, so far as I know, the charges against them of espionage or anything else have never been spelt out clearly. It is essentially speculation. And I must say that from our side, the government right from the start, despite public pressure and despite commentary in the media, played it very cool, very cautiously, made it known that this was a very sensitive matter which should not be discussed in public, and that all efforts were being made to actually ensure that justice is meted out to these Navy personnel, and that appeals will be filed and the best legal opinion will be taken. And I think the Indian Navy has also been very much involved in formulating the strategy and everything else.
Okay.
And this they have maintained right from the start. I think this was a very wise strategy, because given the nature of the Arab states and how they function and what the judicial system is, and power really lies with the Emir, it would have served no purpose in getting into polemics and trashing the judicial system of Qatar and making it appear and saying publicly that this was injustice.
I do want to ask you though. I mean, these are completely unsubstantiated. It's doing the rounds of Twitter more than anywhere else. That there was some kind of LNG deal that was agreed upon, and now we have official word from the MEA that after Dubai and Abu Dhabi, in fact after Abu Dhabi, the Prime Minister will be going to Doha on his way back for a bilateral visit. Do you see merit in any of that? Like I said, we have no independent way of confirming or denying any of those, but this is what people are saying on social media.
A couple of things. One is that if you recall what was being said even then, that you can't interfere in an ongoing judicial process, and that ultimately the Amir can give his pardon.
Yes.
And that the strategy of last resort was to seek a pardon from the Emir. So this was on the cards. And I think most rational people believe that whatever the courts had decided, they're not going to hang these people or give them long years of imprisonment, and that ultimately they will be pardoned. I think the critical thing was when Prime Minister met the Emir of Qatar in COP27 or whatever it was.
COP28,
Dubai, COP28 in Dubai. And he actually made a very subtle statement that the Indian community is doing very useful, sterling work in Qatar and the very valuable work and everything else. In other words, he publicly reminded the Emir of the great contribution that the Indian community was making. So to that extent, I must say that the conversation that Prime Minister had with Amir was the clinching one. And I think it was on the cards that the pardon would be given with regard to the oil deal that LNG deal that you're mentioning. Qatar is the biggest supplier of LNG to India. And there have been discussions going on for a long time for a prolongation of this deal. Now according to reports, a $75 billion deal until 2048 has been signed, but at prices which apparently are lower than what Qatar sells to China. So given the program that we have in India of switching over to LNG in a very, very big way, where do you get the LNG from? Qatar has excess capacity. It is next door. It makes a great deal of economic sense to buy this from Qatar because Australia and others are far away. To that extent, it's a rational deal. Now, whether there is a connection between one and the other is difficult to say. But I would say that we would not succumb to this kind of blackmail and pressure that you buy more LNG from us and then we'll give pardon. I think the pardon was given because it would have been far too serious for Qatar-India relationship, to allow
to send them to the gallows. All right.
But the other last point is that Qatar also sees how much India is investing in its relationship in the Gulf countries.
Correct.
UAE, Saudi Arabia, elsewhere. They can't ignore this. And India is a huge market. And they have to protect long-term interests. We are a huge energy market in the future. So I think a lot of pragmatic decisions have been taken on all sides, and it is fortunate, but the credit must go to the Prime Minister, as our naval personnel all of them have said.
All right. Mr. Sibal, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your thoughts and articulating what you believe was the reason for this pretty dramatic turn of events around these 8 naval personnel who, like I said, were first sentenced to death for alleged espionage, and now it's commuted and they've now been released by the Qatari government, and in fact 7 out of 8 have already reached their homes.